Hey guys, welcome back to Rooted. Brandon Petty here.
Tyler Gilman.
And man, this week and next week's episode, we sat down and had a conversation with Michael and Kara Britton on how to heal after an affair. Mm-hmm. And so, very powerful episode. In fact, our conversation was so long, we split it up into 2 episodes. And so we just wanted you guys to be aware that there are some conversations in these episodes too. If you have any kids around listening or talking, you might want to put your headphones in or whatever. Obviously, we're having some hard, heavy conversations about marriage, an affair, and things like that, and the things that play into that. We're talking about pornography in these episodes. So just wanted you guys to be aware, give a disclaimer, but also remind you there will be a continuation of this in next week's episode. So, man, thank you guys for tuning in to Rooted this week. Get ready for an incredible conversation with Michael and Kara Britton. And remember, if you want the fruit,
you got to get to the root.
Check this out. Rocking and rolling? We good? All right. Hoodies in the morning?
Okay. Are we clapping?
I was doing like a little...
Oh, yeah. Action.
Yeah. Action. Hoodies in the morning. I'm just kidding. All right.
We wrote a song.
Yeah, we wrote a song.
You wrote a song?
You probably need to brush
It's
up
called Hoodies in the
next
Morning.
podcast.
Yeah.
So, yeah, welcome to Rooted, by the way. But we have to start this by saying, Tyler and I, when that time of year comes in between winter and spring.
It's called crispy season.
It's crispy season.
Yeah.
Well, Tyler and I renamed it Hoodies in the Morning because,
Okay.
It's cold enough to wear a hoodie in the morning.
Yeah.
But then it's like in the 70s in the afternoon. You have to take the hoodie off. You got to have a T-shirt. So you almost have to come prepared for 2 seasons in one day.
Right.
And so we talked about writing a country song called Hoodies in the Morning. I think it would be really popular.
Hoodies in the morning. Got to add that little,
you gotta
little grind to it.
Yeah.
I feel like you're going to have like a little rap break in the middle of it, though.
Probably, yeah. Especially if it's a modern country song.
Right.
That's a whole
Throw
other
some
conversation.
throw some 90s hip hop
modern
in
country.
Music video with your hoodies on.
Yeah.
Man, listen. I almost said George Strait would roll over in his grave, but he's still alive.
He ain't dead, B. Petty.
I said George Jones. George Jones.
Yeah,
George Jones. I'm talking about
Johnny Cash.
Yeah, Johnny Cash. Yeah. Anyways, man, I'm excited about today's episode. Hey, I do have to ask you guys one serious question though before we get started. What do you think about wearing socks in the swimming pool?
I think that it is absolutely appalling. Why would you do that?
Well, people do.
Am I sitting across from one?
No. Mostly middle school students. No, we were talking about this fad where they are afraid of people taking pictures of their dogs or their toes and posting them on social media. And so they wear socks.
Snapchat.
I know you have a middle school daughter going into middle school, and so I didn't know if this was something you guys had come across in your own house.
I mean, should we start building confidence in her feet? How she sees herself.
Well, it actually tears up the swimming pool. It destroys your socks, and then also it gets in the drainage
I would
system.
be so mad.
Clogging up.
She comes back from camp, and there's 4 pairs of wet socks.
That's why is your pool backed up? Well,
Well,
there's socks everywhere.
that's what this show is all about, is solving real problems.
Real issues. Deep problems.
Root issues, yeah. Welcome to Rooted. Excited to have you guys on. Of course, if you're new to the podcast, we like to get to the root of serious issues and problems and talk about root issues because we believe that if you want to get to the fruit, you're going to have to get to the root. And so we've just started this season up a few weeks ago, and we're excited as we continue this conversation about when you address something, you have to confront it, confess, and then construct. And so we don't only want to talk about these issues, but we want to give people tangible, practical ways to basically find wholeness, healing, in their discipleship to Jesus, and how you can take steps towards solving some of those issues. And so on this episode, we're going to be talking with Michael and Kara Britton. So welcome to Rooted.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Excited.
And I want to say, man, thank you guys for saying yes to doing this episode because I know we're going to talk about some very, very personal things. And but I think what's cool is we've been in discipleship group together for
Going on 2 years.
a year and 8 months.
Yeah.
And I know your heart is for other men to find freedom and to see men overcome obstacles in their life. And I'm excited about what you and Kara are going to share. And so in this episode, we're going to talk about how to heal your marriage after an affair. And so if that should hopefully spark some interest and some audience right away. As you know, man, we're going to talk about some heavy stuff. But before we jump into the heavy stuff, I want to talk about some more lighter things. And so I'd love for you guys to take a few moments, tell us who you are, tell us about your family, and let's go from there.
Okay. I'm Michael. Michael Britton. This is my wife, Kara. We've been married for 13 years. I think I got that right.
Math, I have no idea.
She's the one who forgot, not you.
Yeah,
He remembers way better than I do.
I forget how old I am, but it's okay. No, we've been married for 13 years. We are originally from Southeast Missouri, and we have 5 beautiful
God
kids.
saved us and brought us to Tennessee.
Yeah, God saved us, and
Selah.
yeah,
God's country.
God's country, land of the volunteer. So, but no, we've been in Nashville for 10 years. I think 10 years this year. But yeah, we have 5 beautiful kids. Braylon is 18. This is where you're going to have to help me because I get lost here.
Raylan's 18.
There you go.
Delaney's starting middle school. Camden's starting 2nd grade. We got Andy starting kindergarten, and then Ezra's in the terrible 2s.
No, he's
Wow.
he's awesome. Terrific.
He is awesome.
Terrific.
Terror.
Terrific.
Well, if you meet Andy and Camden, they almost look like twins.
They do.
Yeah.
There's 2
And
years
so,
apart.
Yeah, there's 2
I
years.
forget. Like, we just hung family pictures up, and it looks like I just love one kid more than all the others, and it's because it's both of
Yeah.
like
Both
you
of
can't tell the
them.
difference.
I can't tell.
Yeah.
I can't tell them apart in the
They
pictures.
can't tell themselves apart in pictures.
Yeah.
Which is
So.
great, so we can get away.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's you.
Yeah, of
That's
course
you.
it is. Yeah.
Honestly, baby, I have no idea.
Yeah. We'll talk about it
Look
when
at
we're
that
older, okay?
timestamp on your phone. That's the only way I could tell sometimes.
Yeah, even that gets me. Timestamp doesn't help me at all.
That's great.
Yeah, no, but we live in Portland, and we've been in Portland for 4 years, going on 4 years now.
Yeah.
Just bought a house.
Just bought a house.
Let's
We bought
go. Yeah, man. So excited for you guys.
man, it's been so just like the last week. It's just been because we're closing a chapter on. We just kind of got the rest of everything from the other place. It's been a lot of work, but it's so like refreshing whenever I get to go home and I'm laying in my bed in my house.
Well, and if our audience is listening, they may be like, what's the big deal? He bought a house. But I think there's so much a part of your story that leads to even this moment
Yeah.
that I'm looking forward to getting into.
Sure.
And so maybe you're listening and you're like, okay, yeah, why is this such a big deal? But it's a huge deal. And it's part of y'all's story. So I'm really excited about that.
10 years of like I said, we moved to Nashville 10 years ago. 10 years of being transient, almost like living in apartments and living in a townhouse and not really having roots down.
Yeah.
And then God just, man, I mean, it happened quick. Like you guys were a part of like seeing that. It was like one day we were like, God, like praying, I don't know how this is going to happen.
Yeah.
And then the next week it's like, oh,
Yeah.
here's the house. Here's how it's going to happen. Here's all the things that come along with it.
Yeah,
And
man.
So, yeah.
I mean,
It's a
clothes
cool
and
story.
everything with maybe in like 30 days.
Under
The
30
whole-
days,
Yeah,
yeah.
it was just insane.
So tell us a little bit how you guys met. You guys are from Southeast Missouri.
Yeah.
So I'm just interested because, there's not a lot of people there
That's
where you
right.
come from.
Not a lot of people.
So I worked at a bank, and I was 20, 21,
I think you just turned 21.
yeah, with a 3-year-old.
Mm.
And
Braylon.
Yeah. So I got pregnant with Braylon when I was 18. And Michael started working there, and I had to train him.
Still working on that.
Been training him.
Still been training him ever since.
Still in training.
But
It's one day.
he was terrible. Like, I really think the only reason he worked there.
He was so cute.
No,
Terrible.
Like his drawer never balanced. It was awful. I think the only reason God brought him there was so we could meet, and he was there just a very short time and then left again.
100% true.
It was.
And my mom knew the bank manager. That's the only reason that I got a job there.
I thought this was about to be awesome.
Yeah.
My mother-in-law kind of picked me out, though,
She
because she was my customer, and she'd been telling him, like, hey, you need to ask her out.
Funny.
So, some people
I'm
have
asking
a
him
terrible
out. He don't know how to
relationship with their
count.
mother-in-law.
You're going to marry him?
We had one parent that's like, you need to meet this girl. The other parent's like, this guy can't count. Get him out of here.
Yeah.
So you started working at the bank.
Started working at the bank. I went off to college, so that was between my senior year. My freshman year, I went to community college, and then my sophomore year, I went off to the university, and we really didn't talk for 2 years. And I had just ended a really bad relationship, and I just texted her one day out of the blue, and I said, hey, I'm coming home for Christmas break. Do you want to hang out? And to
hang on. We didn't talk for 2 years, but he was crushing hard.
Oh.
He would tell me I was his dream girl and how all these other girls would have to
remember
live up
this.
to this standard. I probably still
You
have
messed your
emails.
drawer up
but
on purpose.
somewhere.
All these other girls. Come on, man.
He probably didn't word it that way, but basically,
Game.
anybody he ever met was gonna have to measure up to me. But we were in two completely different places in our life. At that moment.
Yeah. Yeah, let's move past that.
But
we
talking about root issues. I feel
that's the root of it.
That's
Let's
right.
get to the root of it. I came home for Christmas break, started hanging out, and just kind of never stopped.
Yeah.
So, hanging out for.
So after that, how long did it take before you guys got engaged and got married?
That was December. He proposed in July, and then we were married the following April. So it wasn't super fast, but
sure.
not
Took
really long and drawn out either.
Oh, that's super cool.
It was cool. We got to know each other's family really well, in the meantime, which I think kind of not jumping ahead, but I felt like we did know each other really well, knew each other's families really well, and I still had no preparation for all the stuff that was going to be taken into the relationship.
Yeah.
I feel like, and nothing against them, but premarital counseling was a joke, just I don't know. I know, for us, we try to, when we're talking to, younger couples and we're talking about relationships, let's talk about these things that nobody wants to talk about, not just, sex and all the, no, let's talk about all your family baggage because everybody has it.
Yeah.
If you can't balance, you can balance your budget, but you can't be honest about your addictions. There's the whole marriage counseling thing. It doesn't really matter at that point.
Yeah.
And then adding a kid into the mix, right off the bat, that just complicated things even further. So
you guys got pregnant with Delaney, right?
Not too long after,
season,
but we already had Braylon too. So he's living in, kind of the, it started out pretty rough.
It started out, not to get too serious, right, super quick, but started off with lies. It started off with deception and lies on my part. Kara, whenever I say the first 10 years of our marriage, you'll probably hear me reference that several times, and this is the first 10 years of our marriage was nothing. It was all built on deception and lies, and so there was no foundation. I didn't have a foundation, and so we'll get there eventually in this conversation, but the first 10 years, she said we knew each other really well. She really had I knew her, and I loved her.
Yeah.
And she really was hey, we were both really excited about youth ministry, really both loved the local church, wanted to serve the local church. But she had no idea what was inside it, what was in my heart. She had no idea.
And we talk about that a lot. We talk about how when I talk to young couples, I'm and you don't know who you married at least until 5 years in, you know. Because we spend so much time trying to win the person over by being almost somebody that we're not, that they don't really know the intricate details of our heart and what's going on in there. So you brought up the local church. So tell me a little bit about your faith backgrounds and what that looked like after you got married.
Sure. Well, actually, whenever I proposed, I had this big elaborate plan. I got our families together. We're going to do a Sunday dinner together, and I was going to propose there. But I got the ring, and I was like,
he is not a patient person.
I'm so impatient. I got the ring. She was at a women's conference at our church, and I went to the women's conference.
It was like not a conference.
A ladies'
it was
night.
like
a ladies' night at our church.
He didn't like bust up in the women's conference.
Real quick.
I'm waiting for her like outside, like at her car when she comes out of the ladies' conference, and I'll never forget the look on her face. Is like,
it's the same day you bought the ring, right?
No, I
I
ordered.
I
ordered the ring. I got the ring in. My mom. I actually had it shipped to my mom's office, and I went and picked it up, and I looked at it, and I'm like, man, I can't wait. And my mom's like, you better wait. You better wait. And I didn't.
This is the one who wants to give the kids their Christmas present a month early because he can't stand that they're in the closet. Like,
you're gonna get them anyway. Why not now?
So. I picture him like a Kanye, Beyonce moment.
Yes.
I'm gonna let y'all finish this women's conference, but I know
y'all are crying, but I really got to propose right now.
It wasn't quite that dramatic.
I mean, but the thing is, like, I was a youth pastor at the time, and I had my students in on it, and so they were like giving me real time updates. Hey, like
they're like hiding around the property. I don't even know.
They're like, hey, they're at altar call right now. An hour later, hey, they're still at the altar call right now. And I'm like, okay, I'll just wait. And so I waited at her car, and I proposed at the church after a women's night there.
Was it in the
at
parking
my
lot?
car?
Huh? It was at the. It wasn't even in the parking lot. Like
across the street.
It was
parked on the curb.
Parked on the street. She's parked on the street. So I'm like, yeah. She had sat down.
But it caught me by surprise, and I told him, I was like, if you ever propose to me and I'm not surprised, I will say no.
Hey,
because
I surprised you.
It's like a one-time shot.
Yeah.
I accomplished that.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. But no, I grew up in church. Grew up in mostly small Baptist churches, and then in high school I went to a bigger church with a bigger youth group, and that's really where I saw what youth ministry could be. Like, we were really. I was really involved. I did an internship right after I graduated. For 2 summers, like whenever I'd come home, like I was an intern, a youth intern, and I fell in love with ministry in general. But yeah, that was my faith background.
I don't ever remember not being in church. I know I wasn't born there because I've seen pictures from the hospital, but my dad was a youth pastor, so I kind of had that background just with youth ministry too for I don't know, most of my like elementary school, and then he was a senior pastor for a while. Then he kind of stepped down into more an associate role, but just like I grew up in ministry, so I think I definitely like took my parents' faith, for a long time, but probably right around the time like when Braylon was little, it's like I started. They actually moved and started going to a different church. In a nearby town, and so like for the first time I was kind of on my own, and I think it just gave me an opportunity to get to like figure things out for myself. So
then you guys got married. So what did that look like? Did you guys have to find a church that you both enjoyed going to? Or?
So whenever I was finishing up a semester in college, and the church that she was going to, when I would come home on the weekends, I'd been going there with her. I really liked the church, really respected the pastor there. And they had approached me about becoming the youth pastor at that church. And so we started going there together. Like after we
had
married,
different backgrounds, but I don't feel like that ever was like a tension, I think we both kind of were at the same place with what we believed in and stuff like that, like from probably the beginning of our relationship.
Yeah. And I mean, we had conversations because she grew up more charismatic and I grew up in more traditional Southern Baptist environments. But I'd always been like, whenever I say like I was drawn to youth ministry, like I was drawn to the loud music and the moving and stuff like that. And so I guess charismatic churches will give you that.
Well, and it wasn't like
super
probably not what a lot of people think of.
Sure.
Because even growing up in that, like I still was a little like, I don't know,
Yeah.
just trying to figure out like,
For sure.
what do I believe? You know,
For
who
sure.
do I believe God to be?
Yeah.
So you said, okay, so you guys get married, you know, start having tons of kids, and then so you took this youth pastor job, but you know, you made a comment that I thought was interesting. You said for 10 years built on lies and deception. So let's unpack that for a moment.
Okay.
Because I think as we move toward, because sometimes I think people think like, okay, here's a episode on an affair. They think here's this big event, but people don't realize that there are all these little things that kind of build to these moments that we don't always see. And so we're trying to really medicate or address a big issue, but we don't really deal with the root of what's all the things that could have basically led to this moment. And so I'd love for you to unpack, like, what does that look like when you say, like, hey, it's built on lies and deception?
Sure. I mean, how far back you want to go?
Well, even like I'll kind of start.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Like a month, maybe a couple months, like before our wedding. I'd kind of several months before that, just like seeing this like anger in him that was, you know, concerning. And I'm like, I don't know where this is coming from. And it was just so like nothing was happening. You know, I wasn't doing anything. It's like, I don't understand why you're like mad at me. My family is pretty even, you know, like we just don't get mad at each other and stuff like that. So like it was just really different for me to experience that. And kind of digging into it, like I thought, I mean, we're going there, so I'll just like, I thought that like he was a virgin and all this stuff because he had kind of put that front out there when we first met of like, I'm going to be a youth pastor and all this stuff, which like I really didn't care either way, but he never led me to believe anything different. And so here I've like already got a kid and just feel very like less than already, you know, like in comparison. And so we kind of like through talking, like I think I just point blank asked you. I don't know if you even remember.
I do. Like I remember where we were at the house. Like yeah.
And so like came out that, you know, like that wasn't the truth. And so I mean it's just like, okay, like that must have been it. You know, that must have been like what was causing all the anger and the tension and stuff like that. And then I don't know how long we were married before.
Probably because Delaney, it was probably right after Delaney was born. The first time like you had found out that I'd been looking at pornography. But like I grew up very dysfunctional environment, family environment. My mom and dad got divorced whenever I don't even remember them being together. And then my mom married my dad, the man I call my father. Now, like, I was 5 whenever they got married, but grew up in a very dysfunctional environment, sexually abused as a young kid. I was introduced to pornography at a young age, and it was an addiction, like, and whenever I say it was an immediate thing, it was an immediate clinging onto me.
How old were you?
When I was sexually abused, it's probably started when I was 6 or 7, and then went up until I was 10 or 11 years old.
How old were you when you were introduced to pornography?
Yeah, about 11.
11.
Yeah, and it continued on. There were times I remember whenever I would think about it and I wouldn't look at it because I remember like the youth pastor was talking about it and he's like, this is like, men of God, don't do this. But it was always something that just kept dragging me back in. And I never opened up to Kara about any of it. I never opened up to anybody about it. And so like I have this secret that I'm not telling anybody about. And then like it leads to me like hiding things from somebody that like Kara was open and honest with me about everything. Like there wasn't anything that she had hid going into the marriage, and I knew that there was just something that I couldn't ever share with her. I felt like I couldn't ever share with her, like my pornography addiction, the fact that I was sexually abused. That didn't even come to light until like you and I didn't even talk about that until 2017. 2018.
What year did you get married?
We got married in 2011.
Yeah.
I think that's just another reminder. If there's any young people listening to this, it's like, especially us young men, it's like, well, once I get married, I won't have to deal with this anymore. Yeah. And I think this is just another reminder of like, and hopefully this encourages anybody of like, hey, let's deal with this, you know? But just because you get married doesn't mean those things, like all that comes with. So,
well, I did a sermon series one time called Beds and Baggage, and I challenged every young girl who was dating somebody considering marriage to ask the question, have you ever viewed pornography and are you currently doing it? Not to shame him or judge him, but to say like, hey, we need to have this conversation. You know, I think it's like what you said, Kara. I think pre-marriage conversations sometimes are so superficial and so shallow, but those aren't even the things that are going to destroy marriages or end up creating, you know, it's interesting as I'm listening to your story, because isn't it crazy how like you had this inward shame of like, I can't share this, but like, you know, Kara couldn't necessarily hide any of her story because she has somebody to help tell that story, right? And
which
it crazy?
Kind of further, like, it hurt even worse because I'm like, I feel like you just let me feel this shame for, you know, like, because I felt less than, like that hurt worse than anything, you know.
And that's what I was going to say, because it's like, you know, I wonder, like, what made you feel like you couldn't be completely authentic?
I remember, so I told you, like, my senior year, like, I got really interested in ministry, like, I was super interested in youth ministry, super interested in evangelism ministry, and we did a youth night at the park in the town that I grew up in, and I remember telling my story, like, telling that part of it, like, that since I was, like 11 years old, like, that I'd been viewing pornography and it was an addiction. Yeah. And I remember the youth pastor that was there, like, he came up to me and he said, man, that was really brave. And that was the only thing.
That's all he said.
That's it. Nobody, like, followed up with me. Nobody talked to me about it. And it just, like, I'm like, and I remember, like, I had a friend, she was a year or two younger than me. And I remember, like, she, like, looked at me after that thing and just, like, and I mean, her and I were close, like, we weren't like romantic friends or anything. We were really just friends. And I remember her looking at me and just, like, the look of, like, disappointment. I'm like, well, that's not a safe thing to say. And so it taught me from an early age, like, okay, like, I can't share this part of who I am. I can't share this because, like, if I do, I'm going to feel guilt. I'm going to feel shame. I'm going to, like, people are going to turn their back on me and not, like, understand, like, this isn't who I want to be. Like, and so it taught me from that point on that it wasn't a safe thing to talk about.
Well, I think too, like, even deeper than that, you've probably said this before, but, like, from the outside, I can kind of see it looking in, like, his biological dad and his, you know, like, they're very different, like, both very manly men, but in very different ways. And so I know that must have been really hard too as a kid to always feel like you're, like, never really able to. I remember you sharing before, like, you felt like you just had to, like, you couldn't really say or be who you were, like, you know.
Well, and it was, I mean, it was never, like, I remember, like, my dad caught me when like, he found the pornography on the computer, and it was back up, like, dial-up internet. I just remember, like, and the computer was, like, in a common area, but I would wait until, like, everybody was in bed, like, 2 o'clock in the morning, and, like, he found it, and the only conversation was, hey, like, if you ever, like, are struggling with this, just go get in a cold shower. Like, that was the extent of the entire conversation. Yeah. And so, like, I never even felt like that there was I knew, like, my friends looked at it and it was accepted for them, but I never knew another man that was trying to be a follower of Christ. And I was desperately trying at this point in my life. Like, I was desperately trying. and I never knew another man that ever dealt with it because nobody talked about it.
Mm.
And so I felt alone. I felt shame. I felt like, hey, like there's something wrong. There's something broken and wrong.
Yeah.
And I knew, like, if I shared that with Kara, like, I felt like I was going to feel rejection and shame and all that stuff again. Knowing now, like, it's the opposite. Like, she could walk with me through that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to put the burden on her to carry it, but she can walk with me.
Yeah.
And so.
So 2017, you discover that Michael has a problem. So talk about what happens from there. Like, how did you approach that? What happened after that?
I mean, I always knew before I found it, you know, like I don't know how many times, I really don't remember like the time frame with everything, probably as well as he does, but we were living here, and I back up just a little bit, like it was always like from him, like it was my fault, you know, because I think he was struggling to own like what was going on with him. So it was always because I wasn't doing enough, and, you know, all these things. So, and I have a history of abuse as well. And so it's just like, just kind of driving home the fact even further that I just feel really used and, you know, all the things. And so we had reached out, or he did, I don't remember how, but our leaders at church like got involved, and they just kind of made it worse. Like,
yeah, it was definitely.
I mean, it was like for a second, like, oh, I'm so sorry, you know, like kind of like walking through, but I still felt the same thing even from them. Like, this is my fault. Like, you're not doing enough. So it's just like, okay, this really is my fault. And, you know, I just felt like I was just supposed to go lay down and that was going to solve the problem. I'm like, that cannot be, like, does nobody care about the fact that, you know, like, I want to have an intimate relationship with my husband, not just have sex with my husband.
Sure.
And so intimacy is not that, you know. So I know that they meant well. I really believe wholeheartedly that they meant well. But
well, and that's the same time where whenever I did reach out, because Kara told me, like, she found it again, and she told me, like, hey, like, you get help or I'm done. Like, you get help or I'm done.
This was in 2017?
Yes.
In my mind, it was as simple as he's choosing this over his family.
Sure.
Repeatedly.
Sure.
Well,
you know, and what's interesting, like, I think what we are experiencing too, and what you guys both experienced when you brought it to the local church, is this, I think for many churches, there is this concept, you know, especially if you're living in a patriarchal society, that men have needs, and if you have a wife, she's there to meet those needs. And while there is a biblical underlying to some of those things, when Paul says, you know, your body's not your own, but it belongs to your spouse, but he's not saying that in a you are allowed to be used, right?
Yeah.
Because the scenario I always bring forth is like, what if something was to happen to your spouse where you could no longer be sexually intimate?
Yeah.
What happens then?
Yeah.
And I think that's important for people to hear right now when we're talking about this subject. Maybe you have felt abuse in a certain organization or in an environment where you felt like, man, like you said, I just have to do whatever my husband says, because that's what a good Christian girl is supposed to do. And I think that there is so many layers to that people need to hear that is not true.
Yeah.
You know,
For sure.
And I think what it does too is it gives men an excuse to cover up some things that's going on in their own heart that really they got to do the hard work to get to.
Well, you don't have to pursue anymore. At that point, it's more like out of a sense of duty, like, and like there's no pursuit. There was no romance. There wasn't any of that. Like it was just like.
And that's like, not to put like all the pressure on the husband, but when he has loved me the way that he's like called to love me, like I want, you know, to have this relationship with him. And so like, I felt like I said that over and over and over. And I'm like, I want to, it's not that I don't want to, like, you know, I just, like there was no pursuit. I mean, just, and that was really painful. Like just not hearing the things from your husband that you want to hear. As far as just like, I mean, I remember basically begging him one time to tell me I was pretty, you know, and I don't say that to like make him, he was just so caught up in, like, he didn't know how, like, you know, to move
I
beyond
legitimately
that.
had no idea. Like,
But on my end, I'm like, why is it so hard to, like, what's wrong with me that it's so hard for you to just love me, like, on a basic level? Because I felt like he kind of painted me as, like, super high maintenance and all this stuff, and I'm, like, actually not. Like, you can make me coffee and
I don't even
bacon
know
every now and then.
I don't know how to use your new coffee maker, so that one's kind of out the window at this point.
Does it have like a bank drawer on it or
No,
something?
I have to count the coffee beans as I'm putting them in. No, it's one of those fancy whatever.
I think like even me and Lindsay, we've been married 9 years in December, and it's like something that as a dude realized not too long ago. It's like, just because I feel loved a certain way doesn't mean that's how she. And so it's like, okay, just because I love physical touch and need somebody to hold me, Lindsay does not. So when I approach her in the way, it's more of a, hey, you know. So just trying to figure out how she feels loved and learning to love her that way, not just by what I need or how I feel loved.
I found out real quick in my house, mopping the floor is foreplay.
Come on.
doing the dishes.
Bro, I'm telling, like,
folding some laundry.
And it's like, why was I such an idiot for so long?
Yeah, all I had to do was clean the floor.
Brandon, why have you mopped the floor 4 times today?
I came home from discipleship group one morning and started mopping that. You know, I was just in that mood of cleaning or whatever. And dude, all day long, my wife's just looking at me with Google eyes. You know, and
I'm curious to see. I'm curious to see the stats on the uptick in household cleaning by the men after this airs.
Yes. Please comment. Send us an email.
Our floors have never looked more clean after that podcast, Pastor Brandon.
How many men are going to be volunteering for the cleaning team at
the
church?
dishes, the mop.
But you know, she's a very, she's my wife's a hard worker.
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
she is quality time and acts of service. You know, that's kind of her love language. Where mine is words of affirmation and touch. You know, so those couldn't be further from one another. You know,
is yours that same?
Yes. Well, Lindsay is quality time, and she likes to be affirmed, you know, where I am. Well, and I like to be affirmed and also physical touch. But again, we've been married almost 9 years. I just now had this epiphany of like, she doesn't want to be touched all the time.
Nice
but
word,
if you,
buddy. I'm so proud of you,
check
man.
that out.
You got that one.
Can you spell
Look
it?
at that. We're not, no,
Tyler,
Kara,
Tyler Grammer Gilman
Yeah,
over
boy.
here, boy. Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go. Okay, so you guys. Okay, so kind of an ultimatum moment. Like, get help. Now, this is after you moved to Tennessee.
Yeah, we moved to Tennessee in 2014. So we'd been here for a few years.
Must
like
10 years. Yeah.
Camden was little.
Okay.
She was a baby.
Okay.
I remember going back, like, driving the point home that it's not a safe conversation. I remember because I reached out and I really wanted, like, I'd always wanted to get past it. As most men who deal with the pornography addiction, they say, I don't want to do this. This isn't who I want to be. Like, they're appalled with themselves. We were talking about it in a men's group the other night. Like, most men, like, can't even look at themselves in a mirror because they're so ashamed of who's looking back.
Yeah.
And, like, I reach out for help, and the person I reached out to, I remember, like, he said, like, this, I thought we were going to be having a much different conversation today. He said, like, the biggest thing you should be struggling with right now at the place you're at in your faith is, like, an attitude or, like, how you talk to somebody. And I'm like,
wow.
Like, again, like, man, like, just this overwhelming wave of shame just, like, washes over me. And I'm like, I don't know how to get past. At that point, like, I really had no idea how to get past it. And so what I did is, like, from an early age, I knew how to work, so I just started working at it. And I did not, like, it was by my own strength. Like, for, like, almost 3 years, like, I was sober from pornography. Like, I didn't look at it. I didn't, like, it wasn't that I didn't struggle with it, because I did almost every day.
I think that's something important to point out, too, though. Like, when he's talking about, like, an addiction, it wasn't, like, every day, you know, all the time. Like, there would be cycles. And so we would just fall into the same cycles and the same pattern. So I think there are people who don't think that they have an addiction.
Right.
That absolutely do.
100%.
Because it doesn't mean, you know, and I didn't understand addiction at all. I come from a family that, like, thankfully that is not not a
Super
thing.
healthy,
And so I was raised like, you know, pretty sheltered and stuff concerning things like that. So I really didn't understand
Well,
all
I
of
think
that.
especially for Christians, this is what you find pretty common. I don't know, because it was my story too. Like you said, it wasn't an everyday thing, but like it's always a cycle, right? So it's like there's something that your heart gets to this place where you are desiring. Most of the time there's triggers, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're tired, you're stressed, you're whatever. There's some sort of internal thing that's not healthy that puts you into unhealthy behaviors. You go down the road of watching, you finally get to the point where it's like you watch the pornography, you know, most of the time leads to masturbation or some sort of event. And then it's immediate shame.
Yeah.
And that shame, it drives enough good behavior for a while, right? It's like, man, why did I do that, God? I'm so sorry, yada, yada, yada. But it also drives you into further isolation.
Yep.
And so it's this place of like, I can handle this on my own. I can fight this. I just got to quit doing this. I need to, you know, we always talk about the conversation with accountability. Accountability is only as good as the person's willingness to reach out when they are struggling or when they have sinned.
Yeah.
You know, otherwise, I think when people think accountability, they're like, I need somebody to keep me accountable. What they're really looking for is a parole officer.
Yeah, probation.
Probation officer. You know, they're it's like, hey, how are you doing today? Well, then it's up to your own honesty and vulnerability on whether or not you're going to tell them what's the truth or not. So accountability means nothing unless somebody is really wanting somebody to tell them the truth on a consistent basis. And so for Christians especially who battle this, they don't see that as an addiction. You know, they might say things like a struggle or, you know, I don't really do it all the time, but they're not addressing the root thing. The root thing is you have a root of lust and desire that you awaken whenever you need to solve a problem in your spirit.
Yeah.
Whether you are stressed, tired, overworked, problems in the relationship, whatever, it leads us down unhealthy behaviors and habits. It's almost like a natural, like we've formed it, right? From 11 years old or whatever. It's like, hey, when this thing happens, it sends me down this path.
Yep.
And so when you think about discipleship to Jesus or formation in Christ, it's like, I have to create new paths.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've ever tried to like go into a thick, you know, a thicket or woods and try to make a path.
Yeah.
It's painful. It's hard. It's cumbersome. It's work.
Exhausting.
It's exhausting. But there's something about when the path is laid, right?
Yeah.
And you have a new path to freedom. And so I'm glad you brought that up because I think 100%, you know, on this show, we're talking about confronting, confessing.
Yeah.
You need to confess, like, I have a problem.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, men are going to continue down that, and not just men, but women. Like, it's amazing to me the percentage of young women that are now becoming addicted to pornography.
I think I read like with teens anyway. I remember a stat somewhere, but it was like 40%.
It is a major issue in our culture.
Yeah,
It
and
really
I think
is.
too, even on the women's side of it, like, hey, just because you're not viewing on the internet porn or whatever, like, I dare say if you're reading books, because I think that, I know, and that's especially we see it often on the internet with Christian women, you know, reading inappropriate books with scenes in them. It's like, just because it's a book doesn't justify, or you know what I mean? The heart of it.
I'd say 2/3 of the things on Netflix are soft porn.
Yes.
You know?
Right.
I mean,
Absolutely.
And recognizing your family history with addiction. Now, you know, we talk a lot about resurrecting family trees. And not too long ago when I was kind of unpacking my family tree, you know, addiction, and I'm saying I was introduced to pornography in the 6th grade. Like, I will not forget where I was, who I was with, the room I was in. Yeah. But then as I've gotten older, it's recognizing those patterns. Like, my great uncle died alcohol, like my great grandfather alcohol. So addiction runs in my family, and I have found myself getting even like I can get hyper focused on like this new thing and be all in it. So it's like recognizing those things and knowing this runs in my family. Addictive, I say personalities or whatever. So whatever it is, alcohol, drugs, porn.
Brandon, you said something, and it's interesting, and we will. I know we'll get here like in this conversation, but like you're talking about a path. Like once you like get the path dug, like people can come in behind you.
That's good.
Yeah, man.
And so like finding a way out of the woods, like other people can find their way out of the woods now.
good.
Well, I'll
And
tell
so-
you what drives me crazy, especially in men's ministry, and this is stuff like when I'm sitting in a group, and I understand, like, I'm not saying like I'm judging the situation. What I am saying is like it normally turns into like a sympathy fest
Yeah.
of like, man, it's just part of being a dude. You're going to struggle with this, blah, blah, blah. And I get angry because I'll never forget we were actually in a songwriting session, and it seemed like the same theme kept coming up when we were trying to write songs for GC worship, for Generation Worship. And the idea was like, even when I don't feel like it, it seemed like there was like this common theme of like, when I'm in a place where I don't feel like basically feel like being in the presence of God or obeying God or whatever, I got to somehow force myself into this place of, I feel like that's kind of the thought pattern sometimes. It's like, man, obeying Jesus is really, really cumbersome and difficult, which is so anti what Jesus said, right? All those who come to me, bring me your burdens. I'm going to give you a yoke that's very easy to
My
carry.
burden is light.
And so I always tell people this comment: you do realize you can be free from this, right?
Yeah.
You do realize it is 100% possible for you to not watch pornography.
Yeah.
And I think if you don't, and it's not saying that you're not going to have to do the work. It's not saying you're not going to have times of temptation, failure, whatever. But it is saying like, I 100% have the victory of Jesus Christ running through my veins. And I think that's important for people to hear, because I think for too long, it just feels like this very like, it's just part of being a human being. And it's like, but Jesus showed us a new way to be human.
Yeah.
And so a part of my story and my process is like, not already, it's already, but not yet. I have victory, but I don't have 100% victory. But let me tell you something. I'm not back here where I was only having 20% victory.
For sure.
And so I think that's important for people to hear, because I think as we get toward the trajectory of y'all's story, you're going to start seeing like, man, how in the world did God work something out of this? So,
No, that's interesting too that you say that, because I think that like culturally people want to be a victim so bad right now. And I think that was part of what, like, rather than having people who would speak truth, like he would find people who would just kind of, and not really anybody who would ever like call him to more. And so I think so many times it's easy to magnify the problem instead of magnifying the problem solver.
yes.
Wow.
And like it's just a shift in perspective. Like,
For sure.
but
Oh, yeah, no, 100%. Like, whenever, and we'll get to that part of it, like, whenever I actually figured out, like, that I could be free, like, this righteous anger rose up in me, and, like, the kindness of Jesus to love me, like, even with what I was, like, who I was, like, the kindness of him. And I remember, like, there's a scripture, and I can't quote it, but it's his kindness that leads us to repentance. Because had a church leader used to say, like, your heart is just so unrepentant, like, why can't you just lay it down? Like, and I'm trying to lay it down.
Yeah, man.
But, like, I never understood the kindness of Christ.
Yeah.
And once I got that, and that settled in my spirit, like, this anger rose up. And I say anger very loosely. It's more like this defiant spirit. Yeah. It's like, you don't live on me anymore. You're not, this isn't going to define me. I'm not going to wear this like a coat anymore. Like, I'm breaking the cycle. Like, I'm moving forward. Yeah. Like, I'm not going to be still hung up in that 11-year-old boy anymore, because that's, like, from a mental perspective, that's more who I identified with rather than a man.
Yeah, dude.
And, like, so this thing rose up in me, this defiance, and I'm like, I'm just, and from that moment on, like, that was it.
Well, and you and I have had conversations about, like, it's crazy because as you're telling your story, I'm starting to, it's cool because I've gotten to really know you and love see what Jesus is doing in your life. But even you and I have had conversations about, like, why is there's this self-righteous anger towards other people at times, and how that even manifested itself in your marriage. And it's almost like it's almost 99% of the time when you find people in that state, it's usually because there is some sort of secret sin that they have not gotten freedom from. And so that anger turns from toward your own sin, toward everybody else's sin.
Yeah.
And so I love that you said, like, man, this righteous anger rose up in me against this spirit or this sin that was holding me captive. And I think if everybody could just hear that, to say, like, man, that same energy that I put towards judging other people, if I'd put that energy towards seeking my own freedom, how much love, kindness, joy would start, basically taking root and growing fruit in my life.
Well, Kara wasn't my enemy anymore, because that's how I had identified it. Like, Braylon, my son, like, he wasn't my enemy anymore. I wasn't my enemy anymore. Yeah. Like,
oh, man.
And that's a place where you have to get to, where you truly believe that, like, I'm not my own enemy.
Yeah.
Like, you hear people say, like, I'm my own worst enemy. Like, I get what they're saying when they say that. You're not your enemy. Your spouse isn't your enemy.
Come on, man.
Your friends that are trying to speak truth into you, they're not your enemy.
Come on, bro.
Like, you have a true enemy that, like, wants to steal, kill, and destroy. And, like, that was, like, what I saw for the first time. And how old was I when that happened? How old am I now? 35?
We've established that I'm not good.
35. Like, for 30 years of my life, 31 years of my life, believing a lie about myself. Like, and in an instant, like, my vision is clear.
Wow.
And, like, you feel like, and I told a mutual friend of ours, I don't know if I can name drop on this podcast, Preston. Yeah,
you did,
Preston Owens. Yeah, I did it.
Yeah. When it gets, if we want to edit it, we just like, do something like black it out. Like,
I remember telling him, I said, man, it's like I'd been underwater and I come up and I breathe this big breath for the first time. And, like, you're breathing, like, fresh air and free air for the first time in 20 years after being bound. Like, you want to talk about, like, freedom. Like, think about living underwater for 20 years and you come up and take a big, deep breath.
Wow.
That's what it felt like.
And that's available.
It's available.
That's what I'm like.
And it's not, like, guys say it's so hard. It's not hard.
Pride, man.
It's pride, and you have to understand who Christ is, man.
That's it, man.
Because I didn't. For the longest time, I didn't understand who he was.
And surround yourself with people who are pursuing righteousness. And,
not self-righteousness, which is what growing up in the Bible Belt doesn't help, Yeah. Because all you see is these legalistic Christians who never do anything wrong, and they're so close to Jesus. And, like, unfortunately, that's who was trying to lead us, anybody we would ever try to get help from. And so
let's go into that now. Now you guys are living in the White House area at the time. So what year did you guys move into that area?
2019.
2019. You guys find a place to plug in. You're leading worship. You're doing ministry.
I wasn't leading worship.
Oh, you weren't leading worship. I thought you were. I'm sorry.
Prior to that, I
okay,
didn't.
gotcha.
You were helping. Yeah.
So, anyways, y'all are starting to plug in. So tell me where you're at in your marriage at this point, and then let's talk about how we got into 2020 and the affair and all of that.
Well, it's like the very end of 2019. Move over here, not really knowing very many people at all because we'd lived South Nashville. And then, like, the world shuts down a few months later. And so we were kind of, like, holding on to, like, the few people that we did know, I think, and, like, building relationships there because it was just very isolating. Nobody really knew what was going on, and he's talking about the freedom and stuff, but that was kind of, like, we're jumping ahead a little bit.
I'm sorry.
No, I didn't mean a bad thing. Just, like, time frame. I feel like
sure.
is important.
I'm impatient.
Well, and that's why I wanted to, like, pause, come back, because I knew this is what you're talking about is after,
But, so, we're all home, spending time together, and we're in close quarters because we had just, like, found the first available thing that we could find over here. Moved for work, so he didn't have the same commute or a big commute. But like I said, I always knew before I found something. And so it was kind of one of those situations again. And honestly, it was pretty innocent. It was like an innocent question. But the response from him was super like defensive. I was like, okay, what did I just, open up here? And I think, I can't say this for sure because it never happened this way, but I really think if he had ever just came to me and said, hey, I'm struggling with this, like, I feel like we could have worked through that, I'm not saying I wouldn't have been hurt or mad or, any of that stuff. I think those are natural emotions, but it was like the lies and the deceptions surrounding the pornography addiction that bothered me even more than the porn itself. Because it was just so much, like covering. And so just be like all these lies buried in each other. So that was kind of this moment of like, oh, that's where we are again, and it was a big thing. I was very emotionally done at that moment. Because I don't know how many times we had been through this cycle and this pattern. And you were talking about triggers earlier. Like, there was almost always when we had a little baby, like a newborn right around 1, something like that, which, I could see how that could, kind of present different problems and stuff. But, so it was always like in a point where like I really needed him, to step up because I was tired and lost in motherhood and all this stuff. And so I was so just defeated, done. I'm not really sure the emotion, but I was just like, this is never getting better. Like, I'm done. And he had reached out to some people for help that were kind of in a leadership role or whatever. And so they talked me into like doing counseling. Like, let's sit down and, let's work through this together. Let us help you. Yeah. Like, let us help you through this is how it was. Like, give us a chance at helping you through this was basically how it was worded. And so I basically said yes, just as a favor and even in that, like, I didn't feel like he was even trying. It was like, why? I'm telling you that I'm done. Why are you not more, like, do you not take me seriously? Like,
Well,
why are you not putting more effort into this?
If I can, like, that's part of the cycle. Like, because it was always the same, like, for me, it was the same game plan over and over and over again. Like, when I say game plan, like I knew, like Kara loved me, and I knew, like, she was a woman of forgiveness. And so I always took it for granted. Like, I never took her seriously.
Yeah, man.
Like, when she said, hey, like, in 2017, when she tells me, hey, you either get help or I'm done, like, I reached out for help because she had asked me to. I didn't do that for me. Like, there was nothing for me. Like, I say that I wanted freedom because I really did, but that wasn't a step toward true freedom. Yeah. And, like, and so this, like, I took this very much the same. I approached it very much the same. Like, I would always try to do something that would make it look like I cared, but it was really just manipulation, trying to get her to not be angry anymore.
And it felt that way. I mean, that was I think part of kind of, like, control and manipulation were a big deal in our relationship too. I don't know if y'all know me, but I'm not really somebody who likes to be controlled or manipulated. So we kind of butt heads there, but it was very much, like having 10 years almost of feeling starved of affection in your marriage, and then seeing him not even trying when, like, it was very different this time for me.
Yeah.
And so I don't know how to, like, I'm a very committed and loyal person, and like if I'm as loyal as a dang dog, like, if I'm your friend, I'm going to fight for you and all this stuff. And I think because of that, I don't think I had boundaries up where I needed to, because I didn't realize that I even needed to. Like, it never even crossed my mind, to, entertain, anything. We didn't talk about this, but, like, he'd had a affair early in our marriage, which was not the issue. It was a symptom of all the other stuff going on that I didn't realize at the time.
Yeah, we kind of skipped over that whole.
I don't say that like it's not important. It wasn't like a relationship affair. Not to downplay it. I'm not trying to downplay it at all. But like I said, it was a symptom of a bigger issue. And so I'd felt very like, all these things that he's struggling with. Like, I'm a better person than that. I would never do that. How could you? I would never do that. And I meant it in my heart, but what I didn't know is that was pride. Like, I didn't recognize
so
that
was
as
this a physical affair, an emotional affair?
Yeah, no, it was.
It wasn't emotional at all.
No, it wasn't. I mean, I'm just gonna throw it out there. Like, yeah, I'd started working outside the church. Like, I'd stepped down from ministry, and I was just like, I had no direction, no purpose. Like. And I started.
Not a great work environment.
It was
either.
a bad work environment. So like I went to a golf event and I drank a lot with those guys at the golf event. Kara and I
that had never been a part of our marriage at all.
It had never been a part of our marriage, and ended up having a one night stand, and it was just a I don't even really know how to put it.
It was an opportunity. I mean, and again, I'm not trying to like downplay it, but that's
sure.
It was an opportunity, and so, but because of that, like I really did think that I was better than him, and I would never have said that out loud. But everything going on, it was like this perfect storm of stuff, and then here this person who's trying to help us, guide us through our relationship, took a lot of really personal, intimate information that they learned and started pursuing me. And I didn't realize, like consciously realize that was happening, I don't think at the time. There was a lot of spiritual, like manipulation and stuff tied up in it as well. And so, but it's like for the first time, somebody's on my side. Somebody's not blaming me.
Yeah.
Somebody is like feeling sorry for me.
Because they gave you advice to basically like, you need to leave him, right?
Not at first.
No, because it was like the manipulation was so deep, and I'm not taking any of my responsibility out of like.
Sure.
But you said something even this morning in conversation with the staff, like the enemy's a deceiver. Like that's what he does, is try to come in and deceive. And so it's my responsibility to not be deceived.
Sure.
Like I have to be strong and walk in and, in my faith where I'm not allowing those things to happen. So I'm not saying this to like put the blame somewhere else, but like I was walking in deception. I didn't even realize it. But there was enough of like I'm praying that, things will work out with you guys and all this stuff, which kind of pulled me in even further. I'm like, this person really cares about me. They really care about my relationship, but it was totally a manipulation tactic.
Yeah.
And at the same time telling me like, cause I'm distraught, like, and I'm freaking, and at this point, like God hadn't like grabbed me or I hadn't submitted, to him. Like, and so he's telling me at the same time, like, because I'm saying I don't understand why she doesn't stay. I don't understand why you guys aren't like telling her to stay, like that she should stay in our marriage. And at the same time, he's telling me, no, your marriage is done. Like she's already told you she's done. She's out. Like you need to accept that and move forward.
Pitting mom against dad,
back and forth. Yeah.
And I didn't need any help being mad at him. Like I was already.
Well, she was pretty.
I was already there. And like I said, just all the combination of everything happening at once. Like there were a lot of layers of things going on here. And so that led to, here I'm this judging him, for all these years for his mistakes and his sins and everything. And then I like wake up one morning, I'm like, oh crap. Like realizing I'm sitting in the middle of the same thing, but even different. And it was, I wholeheartedly believed that like this was God trying to, like make a way, and just believed a lot of really dumb things. Now I can see that looking back, but it was just an even bigger, wedge between us. And so we had like separated, and we sat the kids down, the two oldest anyway, and told them we were getting divorced and all the things. And I remember like telling him that I wanted a divorce. And I meant it. Like, I wasn't telling him to get a reaction, but telling him that, and he gets mad instead of desperate. Like,
yeah.
And I'm like, you know, like, what in the world? Like, I expected something, you know, not mad because you're not getting your way.
Yeah.
So it just kept, like, you know, reiterating the fact that, like, this was not, and I felt justified in leaving him, biblically, you know, and all this stuff on, like, so many levels. I mean, I felt like I could back it up, you know, 100%. And, you know, but that's the thing with divorce. Like, it's not that God didn't permit it or allow it because of, you know, our own hardness of our hearts and stuff. But I believe that that's not his plan, and that's not what he wants.
That's why the Bible says he hates it. It's not because he hates the person who gets divorced, but he hates what divorce does to families. Yeah.
And I mean, I come, like, again, like, I come from that, and I had somebody, because that was always, like, and this was before, like, I'd gone back into pornography. Like, this was before all that. They had told, like, they prophesied over me, however you want to take that. They spoke a word over me is how they put it. Like, I'm giving you a word. Like, that your kids aren't going to walk through the same thing that you walk through. And I'm like, oh, like, because I'd always been free. Like, that's why I was always like, no, we're not going to get a divorce because, like, we're not supposed to, for one. Two, like, our kids aren't going to walk through that. And so, like, I was bullheaded and stubborn with that, but not doing anything to foster a healthy marriage.
But for the principle of it,
for
not
the
because,
principle, not because of the heart behind it, the principle of it. Hey, like, God says we're not shouldn't get divorced, so we're not going to get a divorce.
And I tell people that all the time when talking with, you know, relationship stuff. I've done marriage coaching and stuff. And, like, you can do the right things, but if you're doing it for the wrong reason, it's going to feel like manipulation to the other person.
Absolutely.
Every time.
Absolutely.
So that's what I think he was caught up in, like now scrambling and, like, trying to do the right things, but absolutely the wrong heart.
And I've seen that so much as a pastor too, where I see desperate men come to me for help, but they're really desperate to correct the situation, but not correct their hearts or, you know, really seek Jesus for themselves. But it's how can God fix my problem instead of how can God fix me, you know? So she tells you that you guys will walk through that. So how does the affair come to light for you?
So before we'd separated, like, I kind of had suspicion. And I don't recommend anybody, like, doing this is part of our story. Like, I started looking through the phone records, and I saw that they had been talking a lot. Like, when I say a lot, like 7-8 times a day, like, a lot. And so I confront them. He asked me, hey, like, I'm, like, they both, like, and this is part of the story, like, they both are like, hey, like, this is why, like, I'm trying to help her through it. I'm like, why are you doing it and not your wife? Like, and so, like, I call that out, and he tells me, like, no, I won't anymore. I won't call her anymore. Like, even that night, like, this is how, like, much I trusted this leadership was, like, even that night after I found this out, like, he comes to the house and sits down and has coffee with me after I found out that he's been talking to my wife, like, multiple times a day for the last week or longer. I can only see, like, past a week. And, like, and so, like, that's how much I trust. And so the week after that, is when she tells me she wants a divorce and we separate. And I had like, her and the kids were going to stay at the house. I had nowhere to go. And so, like, I start staying at their house. And then, like, once, like, I'm going to stay with the kids, like, Kara.
So you're staying at the house.
At their house.
Of the person who the affair. Wow.
Yeah. Like, I'm staying at their house. And, like, I would go stay with the kids, like, a couple nights. Kara would go over there and stay over there. And so, like, they had a spare bedroom. And so, like, I had suspicions and just kind of picking up on things. Like, the affair comes to light. I'm actually on my way. I can't remember if I was already here for Discover Path.
Yeah, he had started coming.
Yeah, I had started coming to GC. Like we had separated in July.
So did you reach out to Preston right after the separation or before the separation?
Okay, so this is the cool part of this. This is where, and I didn't want to skip this. So I don't even know when. Kara can tell you like the moment, or almost the moment that it happened, because she could tell how I treated her differently. I don't want to get emotional saying it. I don't know how not to at the same time. I remember, like, I was so just, like, broken in the pain, the amount of pain that I was going, like, that I was feeling in that moment. I went to work. Nobody was at work because this was, like, height of COVID. But I had to go in because I was getting a shipment of flooring, and I had to go let them in. And I was at the office. And I remember, like, the song "Rattle." Like, it was a huge year. I think that's the year that song came out.
It was.
And like
right during Easter.
That song, like, was just like on repeat. And I remember, like, I stepped out, like, behind the shop, and like, this is the moment when, like, I truly believe this was my salvation moment. Because this is whenever I realized who Christ was and who Christ is, like, because I step out and I'm like, God, like, I've tried to serve you my entire life. I've tried to be a good kid. Like, I've tried to be a good man. I've tried, because I tried. I said, but I'm done trying. Like, and so I remember telling him this, right, wrong, indifferent, however you feel about it. Like I said, like, I don't want to walk this road. I don't want to go through this divorce. But if you're going to be there with me, I'll walk it.
Yeah.
So you either take everything, or like I can't, like, I'm going to give you everything. I'm going to do that. I'm going to give it to you. What you do with it, I don't even, like, this is what I have. This is all I have anymore.
Yeah.
Take it. Because, like, if you don't take it all, I'm done. Like, I'm done. Like, I'm not going to, and I remember having this conversation with him and saying, like, if you don't take it, I'm done. I'm walking away from you. I'm walking away from all of it, and I'm just giving up. And I remember, like, walking back into my office and sitting down, and, like, it's the first time that I'd wept, like, openly just wept. Like, I'd cried because of everything going on, but just the broken weeping the soul cleansing, like, moment where Jesus, like, I see him for the first time, like the big deep breath of air that I was talking about.
Yeah.
Like, this is that moment. And, like, Kara says, like, she can almost pinpoint it because I treated her different. I talked to her different. I talked to the kids different because, like, I was a new man. Like, I wasn't, like, the old man was gone. The new man was here. And so, like it was, that was sometime in August. I don't have a date. But sometime in August is when that happened. And so for a month, like, I'm still just like a broken mess, but I'm having conversations with Preston. And he sat down across the table from me at a Mexican restaurant, and it was the kindest thing anybody had ever said to me. Because, like, I said, man, like, I don't know if you're going to want to hear what I'm about to say. And he said, there's nothing you can tell me right now that's going to make me get up and walk away. He said, you could tell me that, like, you killed somebody in there in a freezer, and I'm not going to walk away.
I ain't going to lie. I might
call the cops.
He said,
hey, I got to go to the bathroom real quick, Michael. I'll be right back.
I am calling.
Yes. I'm not going to leave, but I'm calling 911.
I ain't going to walk away from you.
When
we do.
He told me that. He said, I may have to have a conversation after, but I'm not going to walk away.
I'm here, bro.
Like, I'm here. And so it was the kindest thing anybody had ever said to me.
Yeah, man.
Was like, man, like, you can tell me, like, all, like, who you are. Tell me who you are. And, like, that's when things started to change. Is like, I saw a new way to live.
Yeah, man.
And that was in the light, and that was in the truth, and that was in obedience, and things that I'd wanted for years, but I'd never taken the steps to do it.
Yeah.
I'd never been broken, and I don't believe that everybody has to be broken like I was, but it had to happen for me.
So at that point, had you found out yet?
No.
Okay.
No.
So yeah, let's get back to
So
that. Yeah.
we, about a month after that, like in August, Kara had moved into her own apartment. And I was coming to GC for Discover, and
which is our class to like for new people coming in and trying to become
Preston.
members, yeah.
Preston was trying to integrate me in, which I was very thankful for, and so he got me hooked up with that. And on my way, I stopped to get. During this time, I'd only like consumed Dr. Pepper. I really wasn't eating. I was only drinking Dr. Pepper for like 3 months.
Breakfast of champions.
Yes, it was awesome. No, it wasn't. It was terrible. And I get a phone call from his wife, and because I had said something, like I was like super uncomfortable with Kara being over there, and she got defensive and saying like, "Do you not trust him? Like he's one of the most."
His wife said this.
Yes, his wife said this to me.
Yeah.
She said like, "Are you afraid of what's going on?" And I said, like, I didn't really say anything because I was freaked out by the moment, and but I'd gotten like super weirded out about Kara being over there and said something to him. She said, well, he's one of the most trustworthy people. He would never do anything, like all this. And in that moment, like I wanted to say, well, has he told you about this? But I didn't, because it wasn't my, like in that moment, like I didn't really even want to get into it. Well, she calls me and said, hey, like, and she just like starts bawling on the phone. She saw like an Instagram message or something. And so, like, I get a text from Kara not long after that. And she said, hey, I know you know. Can you come get the kids and take them to church? And so I went over. Oh, and I'm, like, obviously, like, I'm angry. I'm mad. And tried to take her phone away from her like an idiot. Like, took the kids to church, brought them here. And I think I'll let you continue from there if you want to go.
Yeah. Well, like that morning was just like a deep pain, but at the same time, and this sounds weird for some people and they may not understand, but like throughout the entirety of the affair, like I really did believe like God, you know, like this was God trying to do this, but like I was in the Word, I was worshiping, I was praying, like I was really seeking God, and I was just so confused and so lost, and I was being pulled, you know, like all these different directions. There was like such a big push from him and such a big pull over here that like this felt like God, you know, like this feels warm and accepting, and I hadn't felt that in 10 years. And over here somebody's blaming me and I'm the problem, and you know, I didn't feel like that was right either. So but I couldn't reason all of it in my spirit either. You know, it's like I felt this, but there was always just this like I don't know how. Like I'm not sure. And so the night before everything came out, I prayed because I tried and tried. I'm not exaggerating when I say probably once a week. I tried to like walk away from it, and I couldn't in my own strength. And so, and now, to be fair, like in my mind, I thought I was walking away temporarily because I thought like the timing was really what I felt convicted over more than anything. But I'd prayed the night before. I'm like, God, you're going to have to do this because I can't. And the very next morning is when, so like as hard and painful as it was, like I knew even in that moment that was his mercy, you know? Like it was surreal, but like I knew, like I just knew, and I felt such a weight, just like it's out in the open, you know, like, okay, that's great. But I still thought like, okay, it's out in the open. Now I'm going to be with this person. Like, you know, like, cause I still was just trying to figure out like where is God in the, you know, I mean, I was so messed up, so messed up. And so that wasn't how it played out, which I'm super thankful for, but it was just like just a terrible day of every kind of emotion you can imagine. He's mad, the world's mad, like just not really knowing what to do. And then here's this person who said they were going to be there for everything, and they're not.
Wow.
And so much of God was tied up in that I'm like I just felt so alone. Like, I don't think I doubted God, but more just like my understanding. But I mean, I think this is one of the reasons that we were able to come through it the way that we did, or me. I mean, I feel like that could have taken some people out, like with their faith walk, but I can show you the roads that I would drive, just screaming at God, like yelling at him. Like, this is what I'm feeling. Like, you gave me these feelings, so do something with them. Like, just so angry and so confused and so broken. And as awful as that time in our lives was, that part is so special to me looking back, because I felt an intimacy with God that I had never had in my life.
Wow.
Because like we say this with like the organization I work with a lot, like intimacy.
Yeah.
Like that's really what it is. And so like God's always seen into me, but like I'm allowing there to be like a deeper connection in this. And so it's in my desperation, that he's drawn even closer to me.
Yeah.
And I was still confused and I still didn't understand, but I felt him near through all of it. So like, I really think that was a big piece of it for me anyway. I had been praying. It's, kind of funny. Like, he's talking about what he was praying, like, God, this is what I have, take it. Like, I had been praying that for months. Like, I want you to take the things that aren't you. Like, I want, and I meant it. Like, I meant that with everything in me. And looking back, I can see that I'm not saying he caused it all to happen, but like, that was the refining that I needed, because it's the pride and, all these things in my heart. Like, maybe I didn't have all these big physical actions that were, like not lining up with God, but I was so judgmental and prideful and, like I couldn't be the compassionate person that God's called me to be. I couldn't meet people in their brokenness, before that. Like, I didn't know how to love people. I didn't even like people most of the time.
Yeah.
And so it's like this, big bubbly personality. It was just a facade for like, I had no real close relationships that were like where I would really let people in.
Mm-hmm.
And how old was Braylon at this time?
Yeah, he's a freshman.
13.
In high school?
He's a freshman in high school.
And I don't want to like get into his side or any of those things, but like one question, like how do you guys, him being a teenager going into high school, like the effects, both things coming out, the effects on him as a freshman in high school?
He knew everything. I can't speak for him, like whether it affects him or not. I think we were new in the community and that kind of helped. I don't know if he dealt with a lot of
from conversations that he and I've had, we had always had like a really like tumultuous relationship. But once my heart started turning, like I could tell, like, and there was definitely like more healing that had to happen. That has happened, like even over the last year, like Tyler, you've been a part of. Like I remember, like he was pretty ticked at first. It all coming out because like he was friends like with their kids, and like he was friends with people in the youth group, and all of a sudden, like it's like a traumatic amputation of relationship.
Yeah,
like. It messed with him.
Yeah.
But like he had the Wednesday after all that came out, like this day that she's talking about was a Sunday morning. And that next Wednesday is the first Wednesday that I brought him to GC. To at that time Pulse.
Yeah.
And I think that first day he had a conversation with Juan, because Juan had preached that night.
Oh wow.
And that was a long time ago, Juan.
Shout out Juan.
Shout out to Juan.
Producer over here.
Yeah.
Like he had a conversation with Juan, and I think he even like shared some of that story with him, like of everything that. But Braylon, like in that moment, like what I'm so proud of him for is like he didn't hide in it. Like obviously he's still angry.
Yeah.
But like he didn't hide from it. Like he embraced, like, we'd always been to churches with like 15 kids in their youth group, and we pull up and there's 120 students outside. Like, it kind of freaked him out. But he, in that moment, like, I don't think that he'd ever felt more seen in that moment, because someone took 5 minutes just to have a conversation.
Yeah, man.
And so, and they weren't afraid of like what he was sharing. And
I
it probably freaked Juan out a little bit. It's like, hey, I don't even know who this kid is, and he's sharing all this with me.
Yeah.
But like, man, that built intimacy with him, with Juan, and him and Juan are still close. So
I think he, I mean, obviously he, was angry and stuff at first, but I never, like, from the moment that I got to talk to him, I never felt like he was angry with me. I think he kind of could see, like, how, because he'd experienced, like, what was going on with us. Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of the things that I was getting from Michael, he was too. And so, not that he agreed with it or whatever, but I think he just kind of understood, like, there was a lot more, at play than.
There will be a continuation of this in next week's episode. So, man, thank you guys for tuning in to Rooted this week. And remember, if you want the fruit,
you got to get to the root.